It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Good morning, Mzansi, and let me tell you, this is going to be rather interesting and exciting at the same time. Now, last time we explored the fascinating world of DNA testing, and today we are diving even deeper. Joining us on the couch this morning, two incredible experts to help us understand a little bit more: Laura Johnston, CEO of PHYTOCEUTICS, and Annelies Smith, Head of Clinical Nutrition and Mentorship at 3x4 Genetics. Now, just to make our viewers aware, myself and Laura did some DNA testing, and the results are in. But before we get there, Annelies, just what are we talking about when we say, I'm going to go and do a DNA test?
When you do a DNA test, it helps you to see what is the sort of blueprint of how your body works. So we all have the same genes, but they work a little differently. It's almost like having different recipes. So our genes are different. So when you do a genetic test, it gives you information about how you respond to your environment. We always say we can't turn back the clock, so you can use genetics to prevent things in the future.
And I think that is what I found specifically interesting around the DNA testing. And it's a very simple procedure. It's a swab in the mouth, and I can't believe how much you can tell just from that. But like you rightly said, there's so much on the shelves. What do we buy? What is good for me? And I think that answers all of those questions. So Laura, what have your results shown you?
I did the test, actually a different test 10 years ago. So I already implement some of these, techniques to improve my health then. But what's fascinating is that there's so much more that was tested now. So I think genetic testing keeps improving with more genes that they analyze. And I guess my three problem areas are inflammation, methylation, and histamine intolerance, which apparently are very similar to yours, so we're twinsies. But with inflammation, they actually call it inflammaging these days. And inflammation really contributes to this aging process. It contributes to disease because essentially it affects your cells. It causes cell damage. And key techniques to avoid inflammation are avoiding toxins, pesticides in the environment. Things like curcumin are super important when it comes to managing inflammation, and omega-3s. Methylation is basically how your body switches on and off genes, and this can be like positive genes and negative genes. So B vitamins are super important for that. And then also like detoxification kind of falls into methylation. So taking things like sulforaphane, which comes from broccoli, is important. And then the last thing is histamine intolerance. So essentially that means that your genes that get rid of this histamine overload are compromised or turned off or bad. So, we're more prone to gut issues, we're more prone to allergies. So things like quercetin are great there.
It is interesting to say, like, in the minute that we spoke, I identified certain triggers in my own lifestyle that causes me to feel a certain way, which I never really took note of up until you told me, but this is the case with your genes. So histamine is a big issue for me. In the long run, prevention, we spoke about that. Something like high blood pressure for me is definitely something that I need to look at, and cholesterol. As if I don't, look after myself now, that could potentially become an issue. What was also interesting for me on a more positive note, because I know we always focus on the negatives, I do thrive genetically in high pressure and high stress environments. So I think the important part there is to make sure that I recover properly and exercise. I've got a very good response to exercise, but there's so much. I don't even know where to start. So based on our similar genetic profile, you mentioned a couple of products as well. What would you recommend for me?
For inflammation, curcumin and omega-3 are key. Like, they're really so powerful. Being in a natural health company, we prefer to stay away from like the chemical pharmaceuticals, and I think there's a lot you can do with natural products. And omega-3 and curcumin have both shown to be unbelievable when it comes to managing inflammation levels. Quercetin is amazing when it comes to histamine intolerance and allergies in general, and our quercetin contains pomegranate as well, which you love, that addition.
One of the things that can happen when you have high histamine is you get acid reflux. And interesting, sometimes the medication you take can also make it worse because it increases your histamine reaction. So we don't always think when we have reflux that it's histamine. So quercetin helps to stabilize the little cells that releases the histamine, so that's what quercetin does, and so taking that will help to turn it off. Remember, our genes are not there to be bad for us. They are there to do a certain thing. So sometimes if somebody has high inflammation, you've got a very robust way to protect you. Like you were saying, you don't get sick so often, but unfortunately it can cause long-term inflammation. So all those things helps to modulate it instead of trying to switch it off completely.
Yeah, I think from a deep internal level, from a genetic level, to make sure that your body is functioning properly. And I think that's what we're aiming for, the functioning of the body properly.
Yes, so we want to work with it and not against it. So exactly that quick fix is sometimes necessary. So you need to go out, you've got a cold, you need to take those things to just perform, but then you want to see, why do I get these all the time?
Right? Like I have the same stress dopamine pathways that you do. So we thrive in these adrenaline highs and, we feel good in these high pressure situations, but then the stress also takes its toll. And there are definitely ways to manage your stress, but just validating that you're maybe worse at managing the stress from a genetic perspective, internally, then you're like, okay, I need to take proactive steps to manage my stress, because long term it's going to affect my health.
Yeah, I love that. I think it is so important. Ladies, thank you very much for joining us this morning, because it is really fascinating. And I would encourage everyone out there, if you can, go do yourself a DNA test. You will be doing yourself a massive favor, especially if you take a look at the kind of lives we are living nowadays, that what we put into our bodies that could be potentially very bad for us, and your body's responding to it in a negative way, but maybe you had no idea. It really is amazing to see how DNA testing can bring a more personalized and informed approach to your health. And for those interested, be sure to visit the website PHYTOCEUTICS.com to explore their full range of products, because there's so much out there and expert advice to help you out.
Optimize your gut health with PHYTOCEUTICS range of pre, pro and postbiotics. Use code EXPRESSO for 15% off at PHYTOCEUTICS.com.